Those of you that showed up, thanks for showing up. We're the Hellmira LARP Association. We want to talk to you a little bit today about what LARP is. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of LARPs that differ from what we do. Probably everybody's at least a little bit familiar, having seen movies like Role Models, with people that dress in armor and swing fake foam swords at each other. We don't do that. We're a little bit different. We do have some experience at this table with things like that. Sam, you've taken part in Dagger here?
Yep. Which is far more physically oriented LARP, less role-playing, more of a sport. What we focus on is more of the social aspect, the dealing with characters, not with sword on shield.
And in dealing with characters, this is Chris Gunn. He's on the Storyteller Council of our LARP. Sam Kastner, also on the Storyteller Council of our LARP. I'm Matt Pritchard. I'm a member of the council. This is Alana. She is a player and former member of the council, the people who run the game. And this is Mike. He's also a member of the Storyteller Council on our LARP.
I thought we weren't going to admit that.
It's on film. I see people with cameras.
If there's any complaints, they go to him. Okay. So what else did we have on the list of things to go?
Just kind of talking a little bit about what differentiates us from different LARPs. Now, in addition to Dagger here, there's also what's called Boffer LARP, I believe is the common parlance, which adds a little bit more of the role-playing in to the sword and shield as well. Whereas, if I'm correct, Dagger here is really just the physical combat, and no real focus on the so-and-so. I challenge you.
You're a nameless foot soldier in an epic battle. No one cares about your name.
Whereas Kingdoms of Notas is one that is played up near Syracuse, and they're character-driven. So you get magic, so you have healing, or you throw beanbags and fireballs at people. But you have a story, so you're hanging out in the local inn or pub, and then they send goblins that need your help with this orc that took over their land. So you have a storyline that goes along with that, and they usually have an overarching story. But yeah, it's played up in the woods near Syracuse. So.
And Penzig is another good example of that, just a ways south of here. Penzig, what is like a month-long festival, I think, that they do every year, where everybody dresses up.
At least 3 weeks.
Yeah. They've got a full like artisans area. They've got the tavern. They've got an old shipwreck that they've turned into a bar that they use every night. But again, they still have their focus on that boffer aspect with the battles of sword and shield and armor that happen every day, the epic quests. And we're less that and more social interaction.
Backstabbing, conniving, manipulation of plots. So your character earns XP and has their backstory and traits. And being a vampire LARP, you may be hundreds of years old. So surviving the next night is still of paramount importance. Grand battles are to be avoided if you want to live forever.
You know, speaking of that, we're a bunch of immortal vampires. Let's talk a little bit about the setting that Hellmira uses. It's based on White Wolf's World of Darkness, Vampire the Masquerade. It is the thought that vampires have always existed amongst us, puppeteering the world at large, in many sects and many clans. Basically, if a vampire has been written about in history and mythology,
Pop culture.
it's in this book. There's a way to play it. Whether you want to be playing the Nosferatu, or you want to be playing
A Lost
Boy, or Lestat, they're all there. There's options to craft any vampire in your mind. But we are the creatures of the night, so all of our games happen at nighttime. Usually in the nighttime. We usually start about dusk because people have jobs. But it excludes us from a lot of mortal affairs, and we have to come up with interesting and creative ways to not only cover our tracks, but interact with that mortal world.
And the setting itself, when you look at it, is you take what you see outside right now, and then you dump a bunch of dirt on it, and it gets real rough and gritty. The world is as we see it, but the hidden world that's behind it is every mythos, every horror story that you've ever heard. In the setting, there are creatures such as werewolves, there are the Fae, there are wraiths and ghosts, there are mages.
They're created much like Frankenstein.
Yeah, there's Frankenstein-type creatures, and there's even humans that know of vampires that actively pursue them and hunt them. All of these things come together to create a world that's a little more darker than the world that we live in now, but it's the same location. Our games actually occur within the southern tier. We play at places in Binghamton and Hellmira, and our characters go to places that are real within those cities.
It helps ground the players so they can understand their world without having to look at a map, because they're playing out these characters themselves. Setting in the real world makes that a lot easier.
But I totally have used maps more because of this game.
You will learn the geography where you live.
Yeah.
And so it's also educational.
See, other aspects of the game to talk about. There are large, overarching organizations that control and manipulate different sects of the vampires. There's 2 warring factions within them and several splinter factions that are here and there. The game is less about actual fighting and more about the politicking. It's less about playing rock, paper, scissors or rolling dice, and more about improv and playing a role and actually role-playing with people.
A good conversation will get you much farther than the roll of a die.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about what we actually do for the game. What's our purpose? Some players would, disagree with us outright and say we don't have one, but we coordinate the games, coordinate events, help players make characters, help players generate their plots. We try to be that assisting hand. Occasionally driving an overarching story element, though we prefer to do more of a hands-off approach these days and allow players to create their own story. And we try to help prod those along.
We often are the world they interact with.
Yes.
So the players have their characters and their goals, and when they try to make those goals reality, we are what they interact with, as long as it's not another player. We're also the grease that allows the player interactions to happen smoothly, especially with new players that may not know as much as the player they're interacting with, to help everything work well.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of a time for players to get used to the whole testing system. As simple as it seems on the surface, there are nuances upon nuances upon nuances, and it's our job to know them, or at least have a book handy when we don't.
Yeah, well, I really like, we started using the By Night Studios system, which is the revamped system of for
Most
vampires.
recently
Yeah, most recently revamped, because they did their 20-year anniversary, and so they remade the LARP, and so we use that system, and there's no longer so many retests that you can do. It's just the simpler rock, paper, scissors, and then you retest with willpower, and that's...
In the old system, it hadn't been updated since, what, 95?
Yeah.
I think was
something
the
like that.
last time we saw some kind of updated book come out. So not only was it out of date on a rules basis, because it was kind of a slap job, the last updated information I had was from 1995. We're playing a game in 2014. Obviously, we're missing some information there, so it was nice this past year to see them finally update the system, streamline the rules, and update the entire setting to where are we today? What's happened in the vampire world? Really helped out a lot of things, because we started this LARP playing by the old system. The new system came out in the middle of us doing it, And we decided to make the flip after reading it because, well, it would have just been silly for us to stay on the old stuff.
And in 1995, they assumed the world was going to end in 99. So that could put a halt on our plot.
Yeah, a little bit.
We have been through so many apocalypses since 1995. The world's gonna end so many times.
Yep.
Thankfully, everybody's been wrong so far. Our game would be boring if the world actually blew up.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about our setting. Again, mechanically, we grease the wheels. You know, we make sure that the rules in the book are applied when they need to be. Always story over rules.
Does anyone have any questions for us?
Yeah. No, there's not a ton of you here, and some of you are our players. Again, thanks for coming, guys. Does anybody have any questions about LARP, what we do, or you got something?
The other thing with our LARP is it's a bi-weekly event. We have an event in Hellmira, and then we have an event in Binghamton. We rotate back and forth because a lot of our player base is, half our player base is from one place, half is from the other. So we go back and forth between the two events. In between the events, we have a website, hellmira.com.
Grab one of these, it's got all the info on it.
We have all the info there. We also have a Facebook group, but on the website we allow, because your character doesn't just do something once every other week, one night. Your character's out and about doing things all the time. So we've created an option to continue the role play throughout the 2 weeks where you're off. So you can go have a clandestine meeting with another vampire to plan to betray somebody else. You can go about your mortal business and try to manipulate different people into getting what you want. You can feed all of that stuff on our website to allow you to progress the story, and then when you show back up at game, there's something new and interesting going on. There's a lot of management that goes in behind the scenes on that, but it's a great resource for our players to keep playing the game when they want to play.
So a good question maybe you thinking to yourself is why LARP? For anyone who's had any experience in other formats of gaming, probably the majority of us have done some video gaming in our past, and maybe some tabletop gaming like Dungeons and Dragons. The vampire setting really shines in a LARP setup because really vampires about social interaction. When you watch it in popular culture, particularly movies like Underworld or Blade or any of the vampire movies where you see there's this robust vampire community that's really about social interaction. At a tabletop, really it's going to be you and maybe 3 or 4 friends playing as a group of vampires doing your thing, and it's on the shoulders of whoever the game master is to be the world and emulate the world, which can be fun for the purpose of moving your character's personal plot forward. But really the fun of vampire is that social group setting, the conniving, the nasty glare from across the room, shaking the hands with a false smile, knowing that you're about to betray that guy right there.
Shaking hands with my character.
Exactly. So that's really where the why a LARP really could be a very fun experience to change up your typical gaming experience from one of a very linear game, i.e. video games, to a world setting that's fantasy based but still limited to the few people that you interact with. Now suddenly you walk into a room, there's 30 other people. Who are you? No matter how awesome your backstory is, which we encourage strong backstories, none of these people know you. So now the question is, how do you play your character from here? Who will you be to this group of people? How will you make allies? Will you avoid making enemies, or will you embrace having an enemy because that's a strong focal point? So one of the best parts of being a part of a LARP, and why we encourage people to come try it out, even if you're not 100% sure if you really want to play, come spend time. If the vampire setting's not for you, any LARP, whatever is your particular flavor, you should give it a try, because what you'll see is a whole different aspect of social interaction that you'll get an opportunity to really bond with other players, and then also know that, yeah, I may be friends with that guy, but he doesn't know the fact that in character, I'm about to undo him. So it creates a very interesting social dichotomy that you really can't get in any other setting other than a LARP, and particularly is strong in a vampire setting, because for once you'll actually have a chance to be that character. You can really, you dress as your character. However you build that character, you can become that character for the night and really be the star in your own personal movie.
As to what Mike was saying, removing the table from tabletop separates you physically as a character. So while you're having a conversation with one character, other conversations are going on that you do not know about. Whereas at a tabletop, you are hearing everything. So you're then pretending, I did not know that this player is going to try to betray me. In a LARP setting, you really don't know because you weren't in the room that conversation was happening. So there's a level of surprise and excitement that you get from doing in person with a large number of people. You don't know what's going to happen. We, as people, the people running the game, are surprised every single game by what happens.
Like last game.
You never know. So running a game for tabletop, you do a lot of work to be the story, and you're guiding them along a path. Running a game in LARP, it's damage control because this story is happening all around you at breakneck speeds. It's much more interesting.
And absolutely, and to bring back to a point we were talking about earlier, in the World of Darkness setting, there are many different LARPs. Vampire tends to be one of the more popular ones, as does their werewolf setting, which allows you to play werewolves. They have a Wraith of the Oblivion, which allows you to basically play ghosts, so I won't get too deep into it, it's way more complicated than that. And they have the Fae, the Mage, the Hunters. They've got all of these different settings available on their old LARP still. They haven't updated all of them yet. Each one kind of has its own thing, its own feeling to it. You know, your Mage is almost the scholarly endeavor, trying to protect the world while not break it at the same time. Your Fae are a bunch of people trying to play jokes and trying to ruin people's minds. Your Werewolf, that's a very spiritual game, trying to protect your sacred cairn and destroy the evil in the world. And it tends to be a little bit more combat driven because werewolves. And our vampire, of course, going back, is that social interaction. Yes, we can get in fights. Yes, some vampires are better at it than others. But if I can back you into a corner politically so that the entire court wants to fall down upon you and feast on your vampiric blood, I've done a far better job than stabbing a knife in your back.
Or if you do it to yourself through foolish social actions or
We've
foolish
never seen
actions
that
of your pack or your friends, and you get yourself trapped into a corner, that's your own fault, and you have the fallout and the consequences are all dealt out by the other players. It's really, really easy to be a storyteller other than listening to the occasional complaint, because you just wait for somebody else to do something and then you say, okay, this happens. You don't really have to plan out anything. But we try to bring it along. The other thing, when talking about LARP, we talked about all of the big LARPs that you all think about, but LARP is live action role playing. You don't need a system. You don't need anything like that. You need characters, motivation, and backstory. So even if you look at those party dinner games, like the murder mystery dinner games, those are the basis of what live action role playing is. You take on a role, you play that character. There's some mystery involved.
You've also described most jobs.
Yes, there's some mystery. Wow, mystery involved in jobs too. Yeah, there's some mystery involved, and you go through the night. You socially interact with people in a way that's probably not you. Like, you might be a little bit of an introvert, but the character you play is a very gregarious, outgoing person. You play that up. You role play a different role, and it's all live. It happens. Most of the time, things you say are in character, and you got to remember that anything that you say can and will be used against you by all your other players.
It's an exercise in improvisational theater, through and through. That's exactly what LARP comes down to. As you said, Matt, we're very reactionary. You know, players do something, we react to the scenario they've laid out in front of us as part of our let the players tell the story kind of initiative that we've been going with. Players do the same exact thing.
Yeah, sometimes you're pretending to be a Toreador, which is one of the pretty vampires, and you accidentally say that you're actually an assassin in front of everyone, and the players react to you, and the STs don't have to do anything.
Yeah. And sometimes that player rolls with it.
Yeah. I was adopted, guys.
The improv aspect of it is really important to focus on too. For many years I was part of a LARP group in Connecticut, and once a month I would drive 4 hours to go hang out with these guys and play in a vampire LARP, and it's kind of how I got my start. In that group, we had a couple of folks who were part of a local improv group that would put on their own theater productions locally, and they would come to our LARP to practice. So they would purposely build really complex, complicated characters that take them outside of their comfort zone for the specific purpose of being able to interact and think on their feet and try to improv act. We also had a couple of young folks who came from a local college that were actually getting extra credit. Their teacher came and talked with the head storyteller of our group and kind of watched what we were doing, and they were able to get a couple extra credit points for coming and being a part of our organization because it is live action roleplay. Once the game starts, it's live. And if you're in the live area, you're expected to stay in character to give as much of a real, rich feeling of being immersed in this world as possible. So that improv acting actually can be a very fun part. Sometimes it can get a little bit tense. If you need to step away, that's perfectly fine too. But there's a lot of folks who like to take advantage of that immersive improv scenario.
Is there traffic questions again? Or do you have something on
I had things.
it?
So you can see I'm dressed up as my character right now. She's a vampire clown. She runs the circus. When the circus comes to town, be afraid. But it's different than cosplay. Cosplay is when you dress up as a character from your favorite comic book or TV show, whereas in LARP, you're dressing up as your character. So this is how I get into character. I strap myself into a corset, I put some makeup on, and then I kill you from across the room. So I have done cosplay, but I don't come as Catwoman to LARP unless I was playing Volcadian, which is another clan of vampire. But yeah, cosplaying, you can play as the character that you are, but generally you're interacting with the convention populace, and you don't really have very many other people as those characters interacting back with you. Whereas in LARP, everyone's dressed up as their character. It could be any one of us sitting at this table dressed the way that we are. We're a different character, and we're staying in character. There's one person that wears the same shirt every game. It's got holes in it all over the place.
He doesn't have a lot of resources as a character.
Yeah.
People will pick their outfit that they wear on certain things, set it off. We had one character for the longest time who always wore this silly hat, and that was his thing. You know, he could wear a million different changes of clothes, but his character always had the hat on, and that was like his telling feature. We have certain characters, certain players, like Alana, who dresses up like this. We have one character that has a dress that's very specific to her character. That's the same outfit she wears every single time she comes to play. It's a very simple dress, but it's there, and you know when the person's in that outfit that they are that character. So the costuming really brings together who you are, who you want to be. There are people whose characters legitimately just wear jeans and a t-shirt, and that's okay. It just adds flavor when you stay consistent, and it makes the game better.
We had a character too who this young lady had built her character and had a flaw that she couldn't see faces. They just kind of showed up as blurry. She couldn't remember faces. So she would try to, as a character, she wouldn't look anyone in the eye because she had this weird flaw within her character that looking people in the eye gave her a bad vision, and she couldn't remember faces anyway. So it didn't matter. So she would purposely hone in on characters who wore something the same way, whether it was a hat, whether it was the same dress, whether it was the same shirt, whether it was a vest, whatever the case is, and she would, in character, remember those characters' names based on what they wore. If somebody changed their clothing every game, came dressed differently, she would reintroduce herself to that person or purposely avoid them until they came to talk to her, because in character, she had no idea who they were because she had face blindness. She couldn't actually remember who they were. She knew who they were. So that like cosplaying your own character concept, if you're dressing as your own character and you're consistent in it, other players can play off of that. And so what you do isn't just for you. The other players will appreciate it just as much as you appreciate the opportunity to get into character. And that's one of the fun parts of the social aspect of the game.
Something that also helps with is many of our players have been with us for years and have had many characters. So as you are introducing a new character, a new mannerisms, new manners of speaking and dress help differentiate this new character from the player that you've been dealing with every couple of weeks for years.
Yeah, when I change characters, I try to change an accent. So if you're improv players out there and want to practice an accent, come in with an accent and character. Although we do have a couple of players that are not very good at their accents.
A perfect example of the costuming thing is the coat that I actually wore to the con today. Is the coat I always wore as I was playing the character con, ironically. If I walk into a game, now being a storyteller, not playing a character, and I have that coat on, I watch people start to get freaked out around me. And it's always highly amusing to me because they assume that that's the character I must be walking in as because I wore that coat for so long playing that character.
I think that's everything that we had to say. Yeah.
So let's play a little live action role play right now. Let's pretend you guys have questions.
And we'll pretend to have the answers.
And we'll pretend to have answers, so would somebody be willing to ask anything? Just, I mean, you gotta, if you've never done it before, there's gotta be something in your mind like, am I kinda on the fence, or I'm not 100% sure what they're talking about. If you have a question, now's a great time to ask it. These guys are really good at answering questions.
Maybe even if you're a player or former player, you want something to be said that we haven't gotten to up here, feel free.
Justin, you
I've seen over the last 3 weeks, or the last 3 games.
last 3 games?
The last 3 games, your favorite scene of the last 3 games.
When I said I was an assassin.
Flow your government was
Yeah, like, and I stayed in character, guys, and I got extra experience points because I didn't go, oops. And now, like, okay, we were talking about the forums earlier. Now that everybody knows that I'm an assassin, they're like, so what else do you do?
The job market is really expanded.
Yeah, I'm getting requests for things, and I was like, sure, give me a pint of your blood, because that's what it costs.
So, and again, it is a vampire setting, so I think we said it was 18 and over. I don't remember if we said that or
I
not.
believe it actually says it on my card.
But our setting is a mature
Yes.
adult setting. On adult topics come up, adult language is used, things like that. And the theme of the game itself is a mature theme.
Yeah, probably worth talking about what our specific setting is in the greater scheme of things in Vampire. We mentioned earlier that there's 2 major factions in Vampire. There's the Camarilla and there's the Savant. The Camarilla is commonly referred to as the Ivory Tower. Everything's perfect when you're looking down from the top. But they practice almost to excess the masquerade, keeping vampires away from mortal society. We don't exist, vampires aren't real. No, I'm not a vampire. It's of utmost importance to them. And they're kind of feudal. Their prince and their Princess Primogen down to the prattle. With the Sabbat, which is what our game is based in, is an almost religious order of vampires who engage in open warfare with the Camarilla. It is a much darker game than Camarilla. Camarilla can get a little bright and happy once in a while, in regards to vampire, I mean, comparatively here.
If you think House of Cards is happy, the Camarilla's really happy.
Yes, yes. The Sabbat's way worse than that.
Yeah, the Sabbat is
More
Game of Thrones.
More Game of Thrones. Blood of your enemy and so forth.
So, yeah, the game gets a little bit mature, which is why we kind of have the age limit on it. Just to keep young minds safe, if you will.
Yeah, I corrupt them outside.
Another thing that's important to know is in regards to our setting with the adult themes, that is largely due to how characters are built. It's a vampire setting. Vampires eat people. Combat happens, death, things like that. But at the same time, we're very protective of our player base. We're very protective of players who may have any concerns or issues with certain subject matter, and the other players are all very open about talking about it. We do not allow any physical representations of props, i.e. swords, firearms, anything like that is not allowed, largely because we don't want to cause trouble. At the time, our settings where we actually play are in residential areas, people's houses. So the last thing we need is 30 people showing up looking like they're armed to the teeth. That is a great way to ping on the wrong radars, all of them, twice. So we avoid all of that. If you have a firearm, it is a statistic written on a card that you keep. You can, fizz rep it with your hands. But outside of that, we try to avoid anything that would cause us any undue stress with local authorities and or, other people who get nervous, like, what's going on here? That guy's got a revolver. I'm not comfortable with this right now. So it is a very mature setting, but it is also a very protective setting. It's very friendly and open and welcoming in the sense that we will avoid all of the things that any bad images you would have of how a LARP could go wrong. We exist to prevent those from happening. All the ways that you can imagine it goes right, that's what you guys are here for.
So it looks like we're coming to the end of our time. So if there are any questions, now would be the time to ask, and then we'll wrap things up.
You guys didn't say
We're just so good at this. It's worth bringing up that LARP is free. We used to charge for LARP because we had to pay for a location. Because we use residential areas, like Mike said, we don't charge people for LARP anymore. It's a completely free event. Come if you want to bring some food, do that. We don't supply that, obviously. But
And we do accept donations to help
website, and things like that.
maintain the website. We do provide a lot of props and various other things, so that helps.
Letting us do things like this, getting out here to Twin Tiers Comic-Con.
Well, again, thank you all for coming, and we have a booth downstairs. Stop by or stop up here and grab a card, and again, thank you very much.